Bit of a different story here. I want to bring in Beverly Bass. Beverly Bass was the first female captain of a commercial plane at American Airlines. She was piloting a Dallas-bound plane over the North Atlantic on 9/11 when the order came in to divert and land in Newfoundland, Canada. Her experience was depicted in the Broadway musical Come From Away. Beverly, I haven't actually seen you since the night that opened, but you and 37 other planes landed in Gander, Newfoundland. It's a town of, I think, 7,000 people, but your 38 planes had more than 9,000 people on it. You took that order from the FAA. Nobody was to land in America. Everybody was to land, and if you weren't in America, you had to land somewhere else. You landed your plane. What happened then?
Well, that is true. I was en route from Paris to Dallas, and we did receive orders from Gander Air Traffic Control to land immediately in Gander. And as airline pilots, it's not normal for us to be ordered to land anywhere. We normally coordinate our diversions with our dispatchers, but that day, of course, was different. And we were the 36 out of 38 wide bodies to touch down in a 3-hour time frame. The town actually had a population of 9,400 people, and we were nearly 7,000 passengers and crew.
Oh, I had it backwards. Okay.
Yeah, we nearly doubled the population of that tiny community, and we stayed 5 days.
What did you know about why you were landing? You knew it was an emergency landing. You knew it had to be something serious if you were landing in Gander, but that sort of final descent, what was going through your mind as you looked down?
Well, we were right over the North Atlantic when we learned the first tower had been hit. And like many people, even some of the news folks in New York, we thought it was a light airplane. And not that that's not terrible, but it never even crossed our minds that it was an airliner. And then about 20 minutes later, when we heard the second tower had been hit, there were 2 words that came with that: terrorism and airliner. And once we knew it was an airliner, then that became a game changer. And so we planned our diversion to one of the larger cities in Canada, like Toronto or Montreal, and certainly didn't expect to be in Gander when they closed all of the U.S. airspace.
Captain Bass, you just heard the former White House Chief of Staff say something really interesting, that on that day, everybody around the world sort of said, we're Americans, or expressed some sort of fealty or solidarity with Americans. That's kind of what you experienced in Gander. Those folks took you in and made you part of the fabric. I mean, when 7,000 people land in a town of 9,000 people, I guess they have no choice but to make you part of the fabric. But they sort of they did that well, at least according to the play and the TV show about it. Is that what happened?
It's exactly what happened. And I think the mayor of Gander, Claude Elliott, says it so perfectly. On day 1, we were 7,000 strangers. On day 3, they had 7,000 friends. And on the last day, when we left, they had made 7,000 family members that they had to say goodbye to. Unfortunately, our country is extremely fractured today. And if we could learn to operate the way the folks in Newfoundland do, we would be a lot better off than we are currently.
What is your relationship, communication that you continue to have with any people from that experience?
Well, we've gone back 6 times. So needless to say, we've made some very close friends. And some of them have even been to our home in Texas. And the actress who plays my role in New York on Broadway just spent 4 days at our home in Florida. So we are very connected and always will be.
Those 6 visits are called family reunions.
Nobody visits anybody 6 times.
Yes, those are called family reunions.
Captain Bass, I want to ask you, because we were just talking to Captain Tillman about it. As a pilot, you have a remarkable responsibility to your crew and to your aircraft. What were you thinking? Because you had figured out before you got to Gander that something was under attack. It could have been America. You believed it was terrorist, which means you were in danger. You and your passengers were in danger. Tell me about the pilot side of your brain and what it was doing then.
Well, I'm not sure that we thought of that at the moment, and the primary reason is that we weren't seeing any of the images that y'all saw on TV. We didn't know the airplanes had been hijacked. We didn't know the cockpits had been breached. We didn't know that the pilots and flight attendants' throats had been slit with box cutters. So really, we were just managing our airplane, jettisoning fuel, getting down to our max landing weight. We were doing what we needed to do as pilots to get the airplane on the ground in Gander as quickly as possible. I'm not sure that any of us had even a moment to think about the possibility of a terrorist being in the back of our airplane because we didn't know any details at that time.
Beverly Bass, thank you for what you did. And as an extension, thank you to the people of Gander, Newfoundland, with whom you have clearly become family if you've gone back 6 times. Thanks again, and good to see you.
Absolutely.
Beverly Bass was the first female commercial pilot for American Airlines.
My injury at Ground Zero, it pales in comparison. And while it's gruesome and horrific and just a horrible injury, it pales in comparison and is so insignificant to those who got sick and died and those who are still sick. And 9/11 and that injury does not define me. My time there at Ground Zero, I did it. But I block out the devastation, I block out the destruction, I block out the carnage. And by choice, I choose to remember September 12th. I choose to remember the humanity, the empathy, how we all came together. And I'm never going to change for anybody for that because I'm not going to harp on 20 years ago. You know, this is 20 years. Everybody keeps saying, oh, we're at 20-year anniversary. It's a 20-year remembrance. But for those directly affected by 9/11, this is the longest day in the history of days. This has not ended for those who haven't had the justice they deserve, who haven't had the truth they deserve, and are still being denied and neglected from Washington or Albany, that these men and women, uniform and non-uniform, deserve help.
So what was going through, I'm sorry, Ali, as you speak, I'm just dying to know, that day when the towers hit, I want to know what was going through your mind. How did you go towards danger?
I cried. I was in awe. You know, I was up in Nanuet when the towers came down. I drove across the Dog's Neck Bridge, and I stopped, and there was nobody on the road. And I wish I had a cell phone with a camera then, because I looked from the Dog's Neck Bridge what was going over Lower Manhattan. And when I got there, 12, 13, 14 hours later, if you weren't humbled by what you saw, then you just weren't human. And again, while I blocked that out, what was the most amazing thing there was, you know, nobody cared about your skin color, your religion, your politics. Everybody worked together. And, you know, everybody says, oh, it's great to be an American. We label each other too much. It was great to be a human being. And you know, I know I march to the beat of my own drum, but I'm not ever going to conform to other people's norms.
You said something interesting about getting justice for people. So you and others just went in the direction of this disaster when people needed to run away from it. 343 members of the fire department died in that incident, but 257 more have died from 9/11 related illnesses. And we haven't even registered those who were not members of a uniformed service who died because of illnesses there. That's the justice you're talking about.
Yeah, well, let me put on my Rain Man hat, because that's my nickname. You know, back in 2015, when we got the World Trade Center Help Program extended till 2090, there were 75,000 people in the World Trade Center Help Program across the country. Now there's over 113,000. These 20 years have been hard on us.
These are people who have become ill from something that may have been related to.
And more than 50% of them are being treated for more than one illness.
And these are people who worked down there as part of the recovery efforts.
Or lived or went to school in Lower Manhattan. But 433 out of 435 congressional districts were represented at Ground Zero during the 10-month cleanup.
Wow.
So a lot of people went home in the beginning, got sick and died, and they weren't even kept track of. So this is a national issue. And the first 20 years were hard on us. There's over 30,000 people now with a certified cancer. The federal government says, yes, 9/11 caused you cancer. So when I started walking the halls of Congress in 2003 and 4 and 5, and members of Congress and the Senate were saying I was crazy and I was a loose cannon, and science caught up to a guy whose IQ hovers around room temperature, and gave me validity. And now I have a PhD in 9/11U. You know, we're suffering. We're dying, but we're not stupid. We know. We live it every day. And this is Groundhog Day. And while today, again, is such a historic day in history, there is, you know, my heart bleeds for the families today. But my heart, my soul, is crushed because so many people died waiting for help. And while this bill is not going to save anybody's life, it gives them a fighting chance. And it compensates the families and relieves them of the financial burden. There's no comfort in these victories. Look, we got 13 bills passed now. 5 in D.C., 5 in Albany, 2 in New Jersey, 1 in Michigan.
Did you ever think this would be your life's work, John?
No, I thought I'd be golfing somewhere. I thought I'd be working hard. You know, when everybody asks me if I would do it again, I'm not one of those guys that jump up and say, yeah. No, I don't want 8,000 pounds of steel crushing my foot again. I don't want to spend 11 weeks in the hospital with gangrene. That hurt. But, you know, I don't need 9/11 to define me. I needed 9/11 to show everybody how my mother raised me. And my mother dying in April of 2006 was more painful than my injury. And I'm going to live my life accordingly. You know, there's an old saying, you only live once. It's usually passed down to a generational advice from a drunk uncle at a barbecue. You only live once. No, you only die once. You live every day, right? And I'm gonna choose to live my life like that.
What's your message to folks who are not on board with the idea that if we want people to do what you did, to head toward the disaster to help people, which is humanity, it's not American, that's humanity. What's your message to those people who are in a position to make that decision, legislators who are able to say, let's take care of the people who got sick because they were at 9/11?
Oh, you just said it, right? I mean, our federal, state, and local governments need to do a better job to ensure the safety of first responders. And, you know, in 2011, we got a bill passed. After the first time we passed the Sedroga bill, and nobody talks about this, but I'm probably more proud of it. We got We got the interoperability bill passed. It was the last recommendation made on page 396 of the 9/11 Commission. Senator Rockefeller asked Schumer to have me come back and beat up the Senate, and we got that bill passed. And now AT&T has a conglomerate on it. But God forbid, because on 9/11 the radios failed, and that's why so many heroes died. That's why so many innocent lives were lost. And God forbid there's another terrorist attack, man-made, Mother Nature, whatever disaster, they're all on the same frequency.
Right.
There's a switch in D.C. that goes, hey, you can all communicate.
It's a small matter, but it would have saved lives.
And we did that.